Welcome to Black Writers Weekend, everyone. Welcome. I am your host and moderator, Bobby Penn. I am a multimedia journalist, brand coach. I wear several hats, publicist, and I'm excited to share today with author, showrunner, and a multi-dimensional woman, Erika Bryant. She is going to talk to us about her illustrious career in entertainment that led to her book, Doing It Scared, an inspirational guidebook to facing and conquering fear. So, really excited to get into today. I will lead the conversation with a few guided questions, and then we'll open the floor to you all, to the viewers. So, please make sure that you all are taking notes, enjoying the conversation, and save your questions for the end when you'll have an opportunity to talk with Erika directly. So, let's go ahead and get into her bio. Erika Bryant is a showrunner. She's an Emmy nominated television producer, film producer, and songwriter. She has produced over 40 television shows and worked with networks like ABC, Bravo, E, Oxygen, OWN, and MTV. Brian is also a part of the return of the show Real World, which is produced now with Tyler Perry. Now Brian is expanding her horizons with the release of her first book, again titled Doing It Scared, an inspirational guidebook to facing and conquering fear. Erika, how are you today?
I'm wonderful. How are you, Bobby Pin?
I'm great. It's definitely a pleasure to share the screen with you.
Likewise.
Um, as a creative, as a multi hyphenate, talk to me a little bit about your journey to finding your space within the entertainment industry.
Well, first of all, I never referred to myself as a multi-hyphenate because that was never the plan. You know what I mean? I literally kind of started off in the music business and ventured into television. And so, for me, making a way has always just been being authentically myself and following my passions. What feels good, I follow that path. If it's not fun, I don't want none. You know what I mean? It's one of my favorite quotes. And so I do things that really resonate with me, that make my heart sing, that altruistically give back to others, just things that are feel good. I love good vibes, good energy. And so that's what kind of, I'm always in that headspace when I'm venturing into this world and into the world in general.
Absolutely. So where'd you get your start? Was it television or music?
It was in music. So I went to Clark Atlanta University, HBCU in the house, and graduated from there. And I got my degree in television, radio, and film. However, at the time, I was really wanting to be in the music business, but they didn't have a music business major at the time. And so TV, radio, film was the closest. It was mass media arts back then. And got my degree. And while I was in college, I worked at Patchwork Recordings, which is like the premier studio in Atlanta. Everybody from Whitney Houston to Jay-Z to Outkast, Goody Mob, Usher, Toni Braxton, everybody you can name has recorded there. So I used to run that studio when I was a manager there for about 8 years when I was in college and after. And then I also interned at LaFace Records for about 2.5 years, and there are a couple departments there. And then, so I was working, going to school, interning all at the same time, carrying a full load, getting a 4.0 GPA. Like, we can do it all. We are magical people, women, and people, and Black people in general, and so I feel like we can do it all. And I got my start in music, worked at Patchwork for like 8 years total, and then went and worked for Tyler Perry for about a year as his executive assistant. And then I began as a PA and kind of went from the top rung to being, the bottom rung, and being a PA on video sets of people that were previously my clients at Patchwork. And so my first music video where I think I made $100 that day, 150 for like 27 hours of shooting. And it was the Sierra My Goodies, that song. It was her video with her and PD Pablo. That was my very first PA gig, and woke up that day, went to work at 7, didn't return home till like 10 a.m. the next day, and was exhausted. But I was like, that was so amazing. And that, I think I got the bug. And so I just kept on that path. And here we are 15, 16 years later, and worked my way all the way up to becoming a showrunner. So
I love it. I love stories of grit. And particularly when it comes to entertainment, I think sometimes people get it a little confused. They think you just wake up one day and you're there. So I love the story that you put in work. You had to wear multiple hats at the same time as a student, and you've worked your way all the way up. So talk to us about today. You have written a guidebook to help others who are interested in a similar path. Talk to me about the decision to write the book and what we can learn.
So the book is called Doing It Scared. It's an inspirational guidebook to facing and conquering fear. A guidebook because I think that when I graduated from Clark, I think something that we often face, and I spoke with two young ladies yesterday about this very thing, and I think it's that when you graduate school, you think, when I graduate college, I'm gonna be an adult and I'm gonna know exactly what I'm doing. I'm gonna be getting job offers left and right. I'm gonna know what my path is. And sadly, you actually kind of fall into this depression a little bit. Like, what does life mean? Why am I here? I've done school my entire life. I do that decent or pretty well. And now what do I do? This whole life job thing, how do I navigate? How do I maneuver? I feel like I've been having this talk with young women as of recent, a lot. And so, I think that I forgot the question. Jeez.
Your decision to write the guidebook.
Yeah. So basically, not having that guide at that time in my world, as a college student, here I am 25 years later. I'm like, maybe it's something that I could just share my experience. I think that we're in this thing together, this thing called life, this thing called this business, whatever you call it. I feel like we're all intertwined and we are supposed to look back, reach back, help each other, and I have, a wealth of knowledge when it comes to this business, but also just in sharing my experience, it lets people know that we're human, and that their feelings are valid and their fears are valid. We're all have, things that we're concerned with and afraid of, but it doesn't mean that we're different. It means that just push through that thing, because on the other side of that mountain of fear is a sea of blessings that God has for us. And you never can see the blessings if you're at the bottom of the mountain. You have to hike that mountain, climb it, and it's tough, and you lose friends, you lose lots of things along the way. But once you get to the top, there's a whole city that awaits us. And I think that often we don't realize that. So we get stuck and we're complacent and we're comfortable, or we're just afraid to kind of just venture out and bet on ourselves. And I always say betting on yourself is the best bet you'll ever make. You never lose, ever.
Oh, the gems. It was too many. I was going to recap one and it was like 3 in a row. I hope y'all capture all of that. I love it. And I completely agree with you as you were talking about when we get out into the real world or when we're starting a new venture, sometimes it's intimidating because it feels like everybody else knows what they're doing and I'm kind of like the only one who doesn't. So when we share our truths and we're vulnerable and we allow people into our journeys, it makes people feel less alone. So I love that about you and about this book, Doing It Scared. So let's talk about that. What is the moment, I think, when you're talking about doing it scared? Is there a singular moment that sort of stands out to you in your career?
Oh my gosh, the whole career, honey. Like literally I was afraid every step of the way, so graduating college, of course, I was afraid, like, what does life have before me? But I was already in a job that I had been in for a good amount of time at that point, like 4 or 5 years. So maybe like 3 or 4 years actually at that time. And so, I think for me, it was really taking those leaps of faith. One that stands out to me, to answer your question, is when I was at Patchwork Recordings and they were going to sell the business potentially. And it was like, do I stay with the company? Do I try and venture out and try and pursue this dream and actually pursue, use my degree and see if I can do this producing thing or do this television piece, which I had no idea. Like, college teaches you book stuff. It doesn't teach you tactile life experience in the field. So you don't really know how that translates into the field. And I think what's missing there is an apprenticeship kind of thing that we should probably as a people figure out what that is, because having an apprenticeship would actually help and you actually know what the jobs are. So you're like, oh, I want to do this thing. Anyway, the big leap that I took from Patchwork, that was one. Leaving casting, the world of casting, and becoming a producer was a huge one. And I think that was probably even more devastating because I had moved to LA at that point and I'd already kind of gotten my footing a little bit in the television business, but I had been on America's Next Top Model for about 8 seasons at that point. And I really wanted to transition and become a producer. And I I just was unemployed for 8 months, and it was scary, being unemployed in Atlanta and being unemployed in LA, two different things. Okay. Like, it's a whole different kind of broke, and so I really had to figure it out and maneuver and eat top ramen and grilled cheese sandwiches and figured it out. Went back to my college mentality, like, okay, I'm gonna grind, I'm gonna hustle, we'll figure it out. And I actually ended up getting a job with Extreme Makeover Home Edition, and I applied for an AP spot. I got a field producer spot, which was a bump above that, and a huge pay bump from what I had been making before. So it was, again, it took 8 months, but God never demotes us. God always promotes us. And I think that we just have to keep that in mind. Like, when things are looking like it's falling all around us, God is working behind the scenes, moving mountains on our behalf, speaking our name in boardrooms and meetings and conversations that we just have no idea about. And we just have to really trust that is happening on our behalf.
That faith, the faith component in your book. So talk to us about that portion. What can we expect from doing it scared in terms of our faith? Any quotes or
I think the book is very easy to read. It's only 100 and I think 60 something pages. You can read this book on a flight, 2.5 hours to Texas from LA or Atlanta to wherever. You know what I mean? It really is a book about walking, in faith. A career being a freelance producer is a faith walk. Being in this business is a faith walk, because you really don't eat unless you kill something. So you eat what you kill. You got to go out, you got to hustle, you have to grind. And, you have to be humble in the process. You have to make connections with people. And, I always say, just be authentically yourself. But in the book, the faith comes through. I'm not a preachy person in general. But I was raised, by, God-fearing grandmother and, amazing family and things like that. And so I think that the faith comes through, because that is, at the bottom rung, what gets me through. When I have hit my moments of rock bottom, I am on my knees, I'm meditating daily, I'm praying. But in those moments, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna just have to trust that the God that dwells within me is like a string pulling me forward. And I'm gonna get to wherever that is, and where I am is where I am, and that's okay right now. And just embracing that. So there's a lot of those kind of, sentiments in the book that really speak to the reader. And at the end of the book, one of my gifts to the reader is I give a rampage. It's a really, I think it's a 2 or 3 page thing where I really just speak life into the reader. Do you know how amazing you are? Do you know how incredible you are? Do you know how blessed you are? You know how important you are and worthy? Like, I literally go in and just speak life, over the reader, as just a departure to say, thank you for picking up this book. Please go leave me a review on Amazon and spread love, and do it scared, because on the other side is the life that awaits you.
Guys, if that's not enough reason to run out right now and add Do It Scared to your cart on Amazon, I don't know what else to tell you. Please check it out. Doing It Scared, excuse me, an inspirational guide. Come on now, Erika Bryant, please look it up. Yes. Now, I'm sure as much as we're here for inspiration in careers in entertainment, there are other writers here. So talk to us about your process. You are creative, you are storytellers, so you know how to do that. But how is writing a book, how is that different? And what advice do you have for an aspiring writer who's in the room right now?
For me, my process, to answer the first portion, was first, we were quarantining. So the world shut down, except for Atlanta. Y'all was still open, kicking it. So that was amazing. But, in Texas.
And it was open. Yeah.
Right. So the rest of us were kind of locked in the house. And after making a bunch of recipes, I love to cook, I was like, I needed to do something productive with myself, and didn't know what that was. In my mind, I was like, okay, I should start maybe toiling, in my mind about writing this book. I had been wanting to write a book for 20 years, right? Since I was in my 20s. One day when I get older, I'm going to write a book. One day. Here I am in my mid 40s. And I'm like, girl, when is one day going to come? You're going to be 100. What you waiting for? So quarantine, I didn't have work. I didn't have a job, a gig at the moment. I didn't have the pulls of the world tugging at me. I didn't have a job where I'm fulfilling someone else's desires and their dreams and all that stuff. I was just with Erika. And so I dedicated 10 minutes per day to write. It was not to necessarily write the book. It was just, I knew my title. I knew that 3 years ago. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start writing every day. 10 minutes is all I'm going to dedicate. I'm going to meditate and pray. That's private, separate. But 10 minutes per day is what I will dedicate to this process. And prayed before each time I sat down, meditated before I sat down to write, and 10-minute timer. And sometimes it turned into 45 minutes, 3 hours, or 36 minutes. But 10 minutes is what I always sat down to do for months. I was like, I'm gonna just do this until see what comes out. And in 10 weeks, I had a book. So literally, 10 minutes per day. In 10 weeks, I had a book. But again, some of those days were 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours writing because it began to flow through me. And I really do feel like, this book wrote me. I didn't write this book. And I think sometimes that we put so much pressure on ourselves as writers to push it out, to force it out, and just like when a mother's in labor, you have to wait until you're fully dilated. You have to wait till the baby is crowning, and that's when you push. But everything else is you just allowing. And so be in a space of allowing would be my advice to the writers in the room, to say, you know what, I'm going to allow this thing to flow through me. Every idea comes from the universe, from God anyway. So if you got the title and you know what it is, just sit down, dedicate some time. And even if you're writing, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write for 10 minutes. Do that, because that's just opening the floodgates. And as time goes on, you'll write something. And then beyond that, my process was, because I am a TV producer, I don't know if you know this, but we card out episodes on 3x5 cards. And so that became, a tool that I actually used, which was not the plan. But I wrote out the different chapters that I kind of was like, oh, that would be a cool topic to talk about: validation, love and relationships, taking a leap of faith, betting on yourself. So I just wrote all these cards out. And so in those 10-minute times, I would just go, today, what do I feel like? And look at my little board, and I would just start writing, and it just flowed. And praise God, 10 weeks later, a book was born. I was like, what is this? And then self-published it, and put it out, shot a cover, designed it all, like literally all a self thing, me and my crew, me and my team, who was amazing. Laquita's on here. Thank you, girl. But literally within less than a year, like, you can do this. I did this in June 17th of this year will be a full year that I actually completed the book and sent it out for editing through Fiverr. I think I paid like $400 to have it edited, but did it all myself out of my own pocket, and I think, it was scary. I didn't want to be on the cover. I was fighting that, resisting that.
Amazing. What?
But I'm not very much in front of the camera kind of a person. I really love being behind the scenes and helping the stars do what they do. So I was very resistant to being on the cover. So for 3 months, like from September to December of last year, we were just going like, I want a sunset or a forest, and someone's walking through the forest because they're doing it scared. And we're like pulling up all these images, and none of them spoke to me. And I'm like, no, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. And John Good, who's the author as well of Midas, and his first book, I can't remember the name right now, but he's an amazing author out of Atlanta. And he was like, you should just put yourself on the cover, E. Like, you're awesome. You're a brand. And did that. They, gave me the mock-up, and I'm like, I think this is it, guys. I'm like, is this bad that I'm on the cover? They're like, no, it's great. Do it. It's great. So here we are.
I love it. I love it. Amazing tips. I feel like one of the biggest ones I got from it is to break it down into more bite-sized, more digestible sort of steps so that it's not as overwhelming. And then I definitely love the notion of just the free writing. Like you said, even if it's not what you expect to come out, just write what you're thinking and more will flow. So congratulations on
order it later. You can order it later,
Yeah. Or even like you said, using what I like to call transferable skills to card it out. That's a great idea that I'm going to try to implement. Maybe do that for like interviews or something like that.
Yes. And later on, once you're done, you can just reorder it. Like maybe the chapter you wrote first becomes the last chapter, but at least you're like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? It's like a puzzle, and let it flow through you. Like literally invite in your beautiful ancestors, invite in the Holy Spirit, and let that thing flow. It happens.
For sure. All right, guys, I want to begin opening the floor for questions. So if you guys want to go ahead and drop some in the chat, we can do that. Erika, before I let you go, I have to ask the journalist in me, how did you link up with Tyler Perry?
Actually, so this was um, years ago, before I moved to LA, before I even got into television. So I had left, what do you call it, Patchwork, and I was unemployed. I was doing the PA work on video sets and stuff like that, making very little money, trying to just figure it out. And I was also, back then, I used to do print work modeling, like because I'm too short, I'm 5 feet tall, I'm too short to runway model. But a friend of mine that was my photographer was Tyler's photographer, Ernest Washington. He shot for TLC and like Tony Rich, a bunch of celebrities back in the day. And so he's like, do you know who Tyler is? Tyler Perry? And I was like, no, never heard of him. And he's like, what? Really? He does all the plays. And I was like, I don't know. So he's like, well, take these tapes home. You should watch them, these DVDs, and take a look and see what you think. And so I take them home and I'm like, okay, cool. He's looking for an assistant. Would you be open? I was like, I'm open to anything. And that's another thing. I think we have to sometimes say yes to everything, because you don't know the path that God is taking you down. And so I could have been like, was a manager at a studio. I'm too good to be his assistant. Like, what do you mean? I don't need to be his assistant. But I was like, well, sure. I don't know what that world looks like. He had just gotten his deal with Lionsgate at the time. So I coordinated the soundtrack to Diary of a Mad Black Woman, helped him with that film towards the tail end of it, and kind of got into that world. And so that's how I hooked up with him. It was, an amazing experience. He's an incredible, artist, creator. He's really carved a niche, in his own highway. And, hats off to him. It's a blessing for sure. God has been really, really good to him, and he's a talented person.
Likewise, and good to you too. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us, sharing your light with us. It's some amazing questions here in the comments, so I'm just gonna begin reading them. Ashley asks, now that you've published your book, will you be writing more? It's actually a two-part question.
Yes, absolutely. I'll be writing more. I think when I realized it's not as hard as I thought it was going to be, it seemed like a mountain, right? And I'm here and I'm like, I want to write a book. And then I'm like, I wrote the book. Now what do I do? And so I literally made phone calls, did some research on Google, and was really able to figure it out. It's not super expensive to self-publish. All you have to do is buy your ISBN. You have to buy, I think there's one other thing, but it's like less than $100. And then you can go on, you do it into a PDF, you load it on Amazon. Like, it's really not a difficult process. The printing portion, when it comes to buying your books, that part can be a little costly, but we can do it. If you got a regular job, you can publish a book. So absolutely, I will be doing more. I've always wanted to do children books too. So we'll see what, maybe I'll do a Doing It Scared for Kids. That would be awesome,
That'd be a cute idea.
Yeah.
The second part of Ashley's question was, do you feel like you could have written your book sooner?
Probably, but I think that, again, I can't give birth to a baby that's 1 month in my stomach. I think that everything happens in its divine time. So I was very patient with myself and easy on myself. And the time that I wrote it was exactly when I was supposed to. I had sat down to try and write before, but I didn't know the title. It just wasn't coming to me at the time. And then when I got the title, I was like, oh, well, let me just try and write. And I just didn't. It could have been fear that was holding me back at those times. It could have been, I talk about this in the beginning of the book, questioning myself, like, well, who do I think I am to write a book? Who do I think, why are people going to listen to me? Who am I? Why am I the sage person in the room? Who do I think I am? And I had to push beyond that and go, God blesses all of us. We're individuals for a reason. And we all have our own purpose, and we all have our own nations and villages that we're supposed to speak to. And so when I tapped into that and was like, well, listen, if my village is 10 people and not 10 million, then that's fine. I'm cool with that. I'm gonna just write this book for those 10 people and pray that they love it and celebrate it and move on. So I don't think that I could have written it any sooner, because it just wasn't ready. It was still incubating. And when it flowed out, it wouldn't have come out in 10 weeks. It could have taken me 10 years or 10 months or whatever, or longer. So I don't think that it was meant for me to write it any sooner than I did.
Divine timing. I completely agree. Lauren Clark would like to know, have you ever gone through a period of breakdowns and frustrations in your writing? So she wants to hear, I guess, how you've overcome.
I think, well, in writing though, specifically, right?
That's what it says. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, even in this process, on the days when I had a writer's block. I just wrote, I don't know what to write. Or I'm frustrated that I can't write right now. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why I feel blocked. Maybe it's because, you know, these Black Lives Matters protests are like chanting outside. I can't focus. I'm just writing what I feel. It turns into journaling when I couldn't focus on what the book, title and the chapters and the subject matter was. I just wrote and did that for 10 minutes. And then I stepped away. So when you're in a place where you're having a breakdown or a block and you can't get to, just stop, reset, go do something you love to do. That's the best way to get out of it. Go get you an ice cream cone, go for a run, listen to your favorite music, put on some Michael Jackson or some Prince, just literally do something else that uplifts your spirits. Because when we're frustrated and when we're angry or upset or sad, we're blocking. We're not in a place of allowing. We are in a place of resistance, and creativity flows when we are in a place of allowing. So you have to be in a high vibration when it flows through to you. And if you're in a moment and you're sitting down to write and you can't get there, that's okay. Just go, you know what? It's all good. I'm gonna just write for these 10 minutes, and whatever comes out, and you can trash it later and just leave it. And then the next day, don't go back and read what that was. Just be in the moment, be present in the moment where you are now, and go, okay, a new 10 minutes. What am I going to talk about? What do I feel right now? And it may just flow to you. And oftentimes when those blocks would happen during the day, when I was trying to write, middle of the night, 4 a.m., something would drop on me. I'd wake up and be like, oh, that's good. And I would just open my computer and start typing, or type a note in my phone to remind myself of what that idea was. So just be easy with yourself. If you have the moments where you're breaking down, step away. Try it tomorrow.
Amazing. Take the pressure off of yourself. I think that's great advice. And our looks like final question comes from Sage Sankofa. They want to know, what are some ways this book was healing for you? And they actually have a second question as well. So what are some ways the book was healing for you?
So many ways. Again, I think it was me overcoming it. I was doing it scared as I was writing this book. So I wasn't doing this book from a place of, I got it all together, y'all should do it too. No, this was a walk. This was a faith walk for me. And so I cried writing many words in this book. You'll feel my heart in this book because it's so authentic. It's so vulnerable. I'm so naked, you know what I mean, in front of the reader as you read these words. And I get emotional thinking about that because it literally, was a cathartic experience. I think that talking about my childhood was one piece. I didn't want to offend my parents. I didn't want to, make them feel any kind of way. Like, I think everyone does the best that they can, with what they have at the moment. And if people knew better, they would do better. And so I didn't want to offend them. So that was a heart pulling thing. I didn't want to hurt anybody in writing this book. I didn't want to blast anybody, and then revisiting some of the painful things that I had been through. So just so you know how it breaks down is that in the book, I talk about doing it scared, but I share my personal experiences. So me leaving the music industry, jumping into television, I talk about that. Me leaving Tyler Perry Company, jumping into, going to LA to do, I talk about that, about just doors closing, doors opening, moments of fear. I talk about, leaving casting, jumping into producing, how I was, people that I thought were close to me and believed in just weren't encouraging. Like, I talk about a lot of personal things. And so, a lot of it was healing for me. A lot of it was watching a movie of it almost and going, you've come pretty far. You're all right. And we don't know where this road is going, but look how far you've come. And I think that is the goal. If you're writing a book that's from a personal place, it should be a cathartic experience. It should be something where you are kind of healing old wounds, not picking off scabs, but literally like rubbing some Neosporin on those wounds and going, you're okay. You're okay. You made it through that. It's all good,
It's the bomb. It's the soothing.
Yes, the bomb.
I like that. And Sage Sankofa's second question was, what advice would you give people looking for positions as PA?
Put yourself out there. So it's different now than when I came on 20 years ago. So Staff Me Up is a great place. Craigslist is often, you look under gigs, or TV, radio, film is what it used to be, and you can find PA gigs. And I think just, I think Clubhouse has different things where you can kind of tap into these different rooms. But the biggest thing I think is online. Entertainmentcareers.com, I think, still does postings. Forgive me because I haven't been in that world of it for a long time. I kind of, get jobs through connections at this point. But Staff Me Up is another website. Craigslist. Those are the three that popped to my mind of areas to do that. And here's the thing, don't frown at small beginnings. To go from being a manager, of a prominent, studio, making really decent money, going to being a PA, making $100 and maybe working 2 or 3 times a week. It's so humbling, but don't be afraid of humble beginnings, because here I am 15 years later and I can look back and go, wow, like I know every job. And so it really helps me to respect those who are on my team. I don't talk down to people. I don't disrespect their position. I know that it takes 5 fingers to make a fist. And just because I may be the thumb doesn't mean that I'm the best person and the smartest person. Like, we all are in this thing together. And so, yeah, just put yourself out there and grind it out, hustle it out, you know what I mean? And just be kind, you know what I mean? You really are, when you're on these sets, be kind to people. You never know. This is one of my favorite quotes that my friend George has told me 20 years ago. And we worked together with Tyler. He's used to be a designer and all the stuff. But anyway, his quote was, be very careful of the feet you step on your way up, but because it may be attached to the ass you have to kiss later. So you just never know. This PA who's your home girl or a colleague now could be in 3-5 years heading up blah blah blah, doing the most, and you're in need of work. You just want to be kind to everybody and keep it cute.
Keep it cute. Okay. Amazing starting points, guys. You are a wealth of knowledge, Erika. I appreciate you so much for taking the time to join us. Your viewers want to know how to keep in touch with you. How can we support you? How can we get advice from you? Where can we buy the book? Give
us. So I'm on Instagram at eBryant22. That's E Bryant like Kobe, God rest his soul. EBRYANT22. That's my handle on Instagram. It's Erika Bryant on Facebook, which I'm rarely on Facebook. So if you do a request there, just follow me on Instagram because I'm really on Facebook. And I have a website. You can order the book there, or you can just order it on Amazon.com. It's $16. And support us hustling, self-published authors, and more to come. I think I'm doing podcasts and interviews all over the place. If people refer me, I'm here to serve and have fun.
You have that specific question. Lauren Clark, she thought I wasn't going to say her name, I bet. She wants to connect with you and interview you, actually. So
yes, please
connect on Instagram, Lauren.
DM me, Lauren. And Laquita, my PR partner, is here, so I'll forward it on to her and would love to be interviewed by you. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
No problem. And thank you all again for joining us. I have been your host, Bobby Penn, and you can also follow me on Instagram at Bobby Penn, Facebook, Bobby Penn, YouTube, The Bobby Penn, etc. And I also have a book on branding, 5 principles of a poppin' brand, so that you can grow your brand online and sell your book and all of those things. So thank you again for joining us, and I'll see you all tomorrow on the next panel. So take care.
All right. Thank you, Bobby Penn.
Bye.